Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be showing you some quick tips for the Boeing 777 by PMDG. Let's get started. So the first one, and this is one of the greatest ones I think that they could ever add in a game, is you actually have the ability to import flight plans directly from SimBrief rather than entering them by hand. For those of you familiar with our lovely little FMS that we have sitting down here, of course, it's going to yell at you depending on what you have here. You go through all your usual business, and of course, you want to sit in here and kind of dial in your values. You're going to say we're going to be going from New Haven, of course, or we're going to be traveling down to MCO. You're taking all this work here, and then, of course, you're like, okay, here we go. What are my flight plans? MJ, Q167, ZJ, and so on and so forth. And it takes quite a while to actually go through and punch in all those values. But one of the great things that they have is they've actually built in a tool to automatically grab items from it. Now, what I've done here, and I'll go ahead and share this with you real quick on my screen so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like here. But we've already created a flight plan recently. So I can actually request the data from SimBrief, and you'll actually see that it'll automatically load in all of the critical details I require in here. Now, the reason this is so cool is we can now come down to our FMS, go back to our route page, and we can actually request the route directly from SimBrief. Now, if I push this, this works even better than you think it does, because what it will do is it'll say, is this all the stuff that you wanted? I can actually come down here, set payload, which will automatically set the payload of the aircraft, set the fuel, which now automatically sets the fuel, and now I can simply select the route itself. Now, when it does this, of course, it takes a moment to go ahead and request it. And then when it's ready, it'll go ahead and let you know that everything on the bottom is set. So all I have to do now is basically load it. And then I can just come here and I can go ahead and wait for all these different components to finish loading. And now almost everything inside of my actual project has been loaded. Now you'll notice it goes even further than just your actual waypoints. I can actually come here to my perf init now, and you'll see that it'll actually say, these the data that you wanted. So I can come in here and press the accept. It says, this is everything you wanted to do, and you can see it's automatically populated all the critical components right along the inside. Now, if I wanted to be a little lazy here, I could actually come in here and push this one and go ahead and get my gross rate as well as my zero fuel weight at the same time. Again, saving lots of time, easy to use. Our next quick tip is also related to the FMS, and that is going to be dedicated to having quick auto-filling values. Now, one of the things we have under performance initiation is you'll probably notice is looking for us to do our zero fuel weight as well as our gross weight. You would also notice, if we were to come to our takeoff page, that we need to figure out what our center of gravity is, as well as our desired flaps. Now, there's a couple different ways we could do this. One way, of course, we could do is we could go over here, grab the performance tool, and actually run through and calculate all the critical components we will need here. That works great, but there's an easier way. Simply go ahead and I'll come back. We'll head back to that first page there to make our life a little easier. All we're going to do is click on the item next to it, the soft key next to the one we're interested in. And you'll see it automatically creates a value in the bottom here. Now, if I click here a second time, you will notice it automatically takes that value and actually shoves it into that slot there, so we don't have to actually look it up. Now, if I were to go to my thrust limitation and come here, let's say we want to use 5 degrees of flaps, you'll notice it works the same way with my CG. I can actually click right here. It's going to look up the CG of the aircraft, provide it right here, and I can just click like that, and now I'm ready to go. The next tip comes when you're setting your aircraft up and you really, really wish that you knew what your throttle position currently is at. Now, as you probably know, this is a very highly automated aircraft, and a lot of times what the engines are going to be requesting is not necessarily what you, the user, is going to be requesting. So one of the features that they actually built into this, if you were to go to the menu page, head down to your setup options, go to your options, then of course under simulation. One of the items you will have, if you skip a couple pages through, is you will notice that there's the ability to go ahead and select whether or not you want to show the thrust lever position. Now, if you enable this, the reason this is so handy is now when I move my thrust lever, you'll actually see a little line there that'll actually indicate what the current thrust is. Now, the reason that's particularly useful is if, for example, you're doing an auto thrust takeoff here, if I want to go ahead and push my throttles, you can now see the difference between the throttle position and your position as a little blue line. Now that I've given a full power here, I'm just going to kind of glance down here real quick. I didn't actually set any of this up, but that's okay. And what you'll see is this little line here. It'll actually represent the difference between where your throttle is set to, which will be the blue line, and what the actual engine throttle is going to be set to, which is what the white line is going to be. The next quick tip is one of the neat features of this aircraft, and that's the fact that you can edit its payload and fuel at any time during the flight. Now, there's a couple different ways we could do this. The default way most people think of is popping up the weight and balance page, which is very effective. The other thing we can actually do is if you go down to your menu and you go down to your FS actions, you will notice there's an option for fuel, payload, and doors. At any point, you can actually open this up and change any of these values by simply dialing in the new value. For example, maybe I want 25% fuel, and then clicking on the respective button. And you can see that it instantly updates everything inside of there. Keep in mind, this is going to have a big weight penalty to your aircraft depending on how you do it. And our last quick tip for the 777 by PMDG is the fact that you can actually save profiles and open them. So the reason that's so useful is, let's say, you've just gotten in this airplane, we're happy, everything kind of running off the APU, but maybe we want the full cold and dark experience. All we have to do is come down here, actually, my bad, we're going to come to PMDG setup, and you'll notice we have an option for panel save and panel start load. Now the cool thing here is I can actually click on it and pick how I want my aircraft to start. For example, maybe I want it cold dark, maybe I want it cold dark GPU like I have now. And you also have the ability to quickly load panel states. For example, I could open this up and say, yeah, I just want to be ready to taxi. I can simply click on the option I want, press execute, and what will actually happen is you can see everything will lag for a second here, but my aircraft will go ahead and fire up all of its switches. It'll click all the different options. The two engines will automatically spool up, and then the aircraft will be ready to roll at a moment's notice. Now, let's say I didn't want to do that. I could simply come back up here, press panel load. I could go all the way up here, and I could click on cold dark, press that execute button, and I feel horribly sorry for this aircraft that has to go through all of these different components. And as you can see, with a snap of a button, our aircraft is now completely cold and dark and ready to set up. Enjoy.